You know, I have a little story too. I saw the results of what you do in Haiti last year after the election. My wife and I went down and spent a week at an orphanage down there, and we saw that 1 meal a day. And it really does make a difference. But I have 3 questions. I'd love to give you, I'm going to just lay them out first and let you answer these at your discretion. One is this technology transfer. As you mentioned in your testimony, that you know, our universities, our land-grant universities, as well as our companies, the technology that we've developed in agriculture over the last 30 years is phenomenal. Our productivity has gone up dramatically. I have a very good friend who was CEO of Pioneer Seed Company, part of DuPont, and I look at corn just as an example. Productivity of corn since I was a kid, you know, harvesting corn on our farm. I mean, it's just incredible. And that only enhances our ability to help the rest of the world. So this technology transfer is one question. Can you speak to that? Second is the procurement. LRP, you've mentioned a couple of times, but can you mention how important that flexibility is long-term? And I want to remind the committee for the record that it's important that we work on technology transfer because honestly, and I say this with all due respect, 40% of what we spent last year as a federal government, including every one of our philanthropy programs, 40% of those programs, Mr. Chairman, was borrowed. That means these programs are in great jeopardy, and we cannot let anything happen to these programs. I know the need out there. And the third area is waste. You mentioned in your written testimony 30% or so of the world's food production is waste. Can you just speak to those 3 briefly for us?
I certainly can, sir. Thank you. They're all very valid and good questions. And again, it's quite an honor to be with my home state senator always. I'm so glad we always have a member from Georgia on the Ag Committee. It's nice to have 2 pictures up here. We just need to keep having more. Tech transfer, you know, the Secretary of Vilsack often says that, you know, science has got to be shared and technology has to be shared. And it's something I think USDA has been very a leader in around the world with our partners, looking at the great research and the science and the technology that we do have and sharing with our partners who don't. I was reminded of a story of, you know, how weather is just such a huge thing, weather predictions for farmers. And I mean, that's the first thing my daddy asks, and it's the last thing he does for going to bed is what is the weather, so you know how to make decisions. He even asked me about weather here, and I don't know why, but that's important to him. That's always the first question. And thinking about a producer in a remote area that does not get a weather report, has absolutely no idea. They don't know that the storm is coming. They don't know not to harvest and put maize out to dry and the weather's going to come. They don't even have the ability to know. How do we communicate better? How do we share that kind of data on some of the very basic fundamental issues, not even the more complicated that you're addressing, I think is something that USDA wants to be and has been a leader on and will continue to focus on with this committee's help. For LRP long term, I think it's the same relationship we see in our country in some ways with farm to school. Buy-in from a local community, a connection with that school, ownership of what's happening there. Relationships of a local group of farmers who can help feed the kids in their school, whether they have kids there or not. Building those ties, I think, is very key. Also, just the balanced diet that the kids will get. Even if they're getting our porridge, our rations from the U.S., just like kids here, they need more vegetables and being able to make that connection. But it's not just nutrition. It's also the buy-in and the commitment from that community who wants that school to stay open. They want their kids going there. They have a connection there. It's a market for them. It's a way to provide a sense of community and investment in education for all kids, boys and girls. And food waste. That could be a whole hearing on food waste, and the committee maybe should do that at some point. 30% is lost. In our country, it is more at institutional level, at personal level. Folks like me who go to the farmer's market, I need 3 apples, I buy 9 because I want to help that farmer, and then I don't eat them. And I buy all these wonderful produce, and I swear to my husband every night, we're going to eat at home. You know, I'm going to cook, you're going to cook, and then we go out. So a lot of us in the U.S. make those kind of decisions, but around the world, it's post-harvest. And it's some of the issues I talked about with not knowing weather and being able to predict weather, not being able to gather crops, don't having the tools to do so, the equipment to do so, the people to do so. Sometimes it can be a variety of things. But the U.S., we have a pledge to cut that in half in the U.S. by 2015. And I think we're going to continue to work with the rest of the world. I was able to lead a discussion at the UN conference this fall on these very issues with all of our partners around the world. How do we address these issues? We're going to have 9 billion plus people to feed by 2050. We need to be looking at all these tools, and food waste is one of them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.